Congressman Andy Ogles, of course, you know, congressman from the 5th Congressional District, he is now going after Belmont University. Now, as you know, Donald Trump has signed an executive order, and this was a while ago now, but he signed an executive order banning all things DEI from universities. And so apparently Belmont University did not get that. This is what the accusation is. Belmont University didn't get the memo because there's audio, and I've got some of that audio that will prove that they're just going to keep doing what they're doing regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, remember that, and I've interviewed multiple folks on this, but remember part of what they're doing in education is they're continuing on with the DEI policies. They just changed the names. Not only do they do that in academia, but they've also been doing it in the government itself. Well, we'll just change the name. We don't call it, diversity, equity, and inclusion anymore. We call it, whatever. And they'll make up some stupid flowery name that they do in the government. And then they continue on. You know who figured that out? By the way, Marco Rubio. And so I got to tell you that when you hear these kinds of stories, allegedly, it is incredibly infuriating. So this is, I think this is Channel 2 that was covering the story. And this is part of what they had to say. This is, again, Andy Ogles and the lawsuit against or calling for an investigation into Belmont University.
The footage was posted by Town Hall, a conservative media outlet. It appears to have been recorded last month secretly. An employee could be heard discussing Belmont's Office of Hope, Unity, and Belonging, known as the Hub.
There you go. Hope, remember I said some sort of a flowery name? Hope, Unity, and Belonging is now where this DEI stuff is taking place.
Could be heard discussing Belmont's Office of Hope, Unity, and Belonging, known as the Hub. He admits it's a DEI program and that they changed the language used by them. The staff member also said undocumented students attend the university.
Yeah, and there are documents that literally show that they're looking at budgets and so on and so forth. And one of those line items literally says diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, which is now illegal, according to President Trump and his order and his executive order. And so part of this conversation has to be, okay, so Andy Ogles finds out about this, and what does he do?
Congressman Ogles now wants a federal probe to review if Belmont is in compliance with Trump's executive order and to clarify if name changes constitutes violation of the law. He also called for the school to be defunded. In a statement to WSMV4, Belmont University responded to Ogles' claims, saying in part, "We are deeply saddened that these videos portray Belmont as having a shadow operation, as nothing could be further from the truth. It's also disappointing that Representative Ogles and others perceive such an approach as being representative of Belmont University's character and values."
All right, so we'll have to see. This is, by the way, some of the audio. And Belmont University, they're saying, that they're not doing what they're being accused of. Well, let's listen to some of this audio where they're literally saying that we're going to continue doing what we're doing.
We're always going to keep doing what we're doing. The work never stops. We just change on how we talk about it.
Yeah, this is Joseph Lukey, by the way, Belmont University Assistant Director of Student Success and Flourishing. And this is what he says. He just said, we're just changing the way that we're talking about it.
Obviously, you can tell I'm very passionate about stuff like this. We always try to just adapt to what's happening around us. But that doesn't mean like what we're focusing on completely stops. We definitely have to navigate very carefully and just cautiously, just because we just don't ever know, especially with like the ICE raids that are happening in the city. That impacts our campus. We do have undocumented students here. Yeah. We don't communicate to anybody externally who's undocumented, who is. And so yes, we know who it is. Faculty don't really know. How could they? Unless it's indicated in the system somewhere.
So they're, I don't know, man, that sounds pretty straightforward. So they admit that they've got undocumented students at Belmont, and they also admit that, and there's some gray area perhaps on this one, but they also admit that they're changing the way they're talking about things, which, at least to me, the way that I interpret this, and obviously Andy Ogles, Congressman Ogles, feels the same way, where they're changing the way that they speak about these things and changing the names, which, at least to them, constitutes not talking about DEI and not executing DEI initiatives. But, I mean, again, that's what we're finding is instead of calling something DEI, they're calling it hope and belonging and all that other nonsense.
We have an office just dedicated for like international students. We try to create it as a inclusive space as possible here at Belmont. No, we're not going to be out in the news doing all these things. This is how we stand, or this is what we stand by. No, we're not going to make any outward statements. However, the work, the initiatives, things that are happening on campus, that's how we show how inclusive we're being. Even with us being a private school, like we do get some heat on it. The hub will be your point of contact to really just understand how the landscape looks at Belmont, but also how can you be involved in those things without like the feds running in here. We're doing the work, we just may not be as loud as other people are about it. It is the way, because if you're navigating in the shadows, like nobody's paying attention to Belmont.
Wow. Well, they are now. I love it. Nobody's paying attention to Belmont. Well, Town Hall did, and they got that audio, and that audio, at least to me, it does sound like a smoking gun, and so we'll try to get Congressman Ogles on to talk about this. He's not, try to get him on it, honest, just being honest. Since I said that he was kissing Trump's butt, he won't come on. I've asked, but I can't seem to get him on. Anyway, moving right along. Joy Reid. And by the way, shame on Belmont. That audio sounds to me like they're operating in the shadows, trying to get away with DEI and trying to get away with the specific things that Donald Trump has executive ordered out. So I like the fact that Congressman Ogles is calling for that investigation, and we will continue to follow that story. Now, there is a story out there. Joy Reid, we all know Joy Reid, right? I mean, I wish that we didn't, but we do. By the way, CNN reporting new developments as in this whole birthday note with that drawing to Epstein. The new development is, and I've been sharing this with you since the beginning, Donald Trump is denying writing that very odd and weird birthday note to Jeffrey Epstein. By the way, Elon Musk, I forgot to mention this. Elon Musk has actually come out now and said, Donald Trump doesn't speak like this, and Donald Trump doesn't act like this. Can you imagine Donald Trump being so incredibly busy that he was back in 2003, writing that kind of a ridiculous kind of a note to Jeffrey Epstein? I think that is so stupid. I don't know if anybody would ever do something that dumb. Anyway, because it's just not something that Donald Trump would do. He's very much of a straight shooter. Piers Morgan and Joy Reid got into it. I want to play this for you because, Joy Reid, she's obviously out there talking about how, I got fired from MSNBC because I'm a black woman, because the color of my skin, even though she was actually replaced by a black woman. Piers Morgan absolutely calls her out. You ready for this? Apparently, she and Piers had an interview. So Joy Reid had an interview with a guy named Mark Lamont Hill. Now, by the way, in this interview, Mark Lamont Hill is wearing a T-shirt as he's interviewing Joy Reid. Do you know what the shirt read between Joy Reid and Mark Lamont Hill? Mark Lamont Hill is wearing a shirt that says, "The future is black and feminist." Wow. I don't know if you get any more woke than that. The future is black and feminist. Okay. Identity, of course, is everything to these people, including Joy Reid, apparently including Mark Lamont Hill. Accomplishment and merit means nothing. But this is what she said on the Mark Lamont Hill podcast.
After I said on my show that the reason Americans could relate to Ukrainians in a way that they didn't relate to Palestinians, that Ukrainians are white. And so watching white people get their schools bombed was, hit different. That hit our ratings. I mean, we could see the loss of white viewers from that moment that I said that. So they were like, we don't like the name calling. And also I'm a Black woman. So, I mean, I'm sure it makes him angrier, when I say things.
I mean, see, that's what she says. I mean, remember, everything is about race to these folks and identity. Now, remember that after she got fired, she went running around saying the reason that she got fired was because she was Black. Now, remember, again, she was replaced by a Black woman. She was employed by MSNBC for years, despite the fact that she was a Black female. Her ratings had dropped like 45%, something like that. And she talks about the monologue where she spoke about Americans siding with Israel and not Palestinians because they like brown people. They didn't like brown people. That's what she said. She said that Americans are siding with Israel because they didn't like brown people. And, of course, the brown people to Joy Reid are the Palestinians. Forget about their support for Hamas. Now, I'm wondering if that may have been a jump the shark moment where people were like, okay, enough of this. Because you just heard the audio where she said, we could tell when I did that monologue, people just tuned out. We lost all of my white viewers. Maybe that's because that's the moment that people realized how dumb you were, Joy Reid. So Piers Morgan goes after her big time in an interview last night.
No, Joy, I mean, look, let's be honest. I don't think you were fired after all those years because of your skin colour or because you're a Black woman. I think you were fired because your show just got increasingly unpopular. It happens all the time in TV. That's why you got let go. Why play the race card?
Oh, snap. Why play? I mean, he asked her straight up. And then the conversation, it just started careening out of control.
First of all, I love the fact that your play the race card is your version of the race card. You literally are so fixated on trying to racialize conversations with me, Piers, that I find it actually quite charming.
You racialize more conversations in your tenure at MSNBC than any host in history.
All right, Mark. All right, Piers. And the bottom line is you take an entire conversation that I had with Mark Lamont Hill and pick the bits that you can racialize because this is your shtick. And I get that this is your shtick.
You racialize everything, Joy. Come on.
I get it. I understand this is your shtick, Piers. And listen, game recognizes game. I get this is
it's
your
not
game.
My shtick.
And the bottom line,
it was your shtick.
It is your shtick, and everyone knows that it is.
Shtick.
It was absolutely Joy Reid's shtick. Come on. Best part of all of that is she says that he pulled a part of the conversation that he could racialize. Well, that is exactly what she does and did. She did that every night on MSNBC for years. And so I love how she's calling out Piers Morgan and saying, oh, well, this racializing everything, that is your shtick, Piers Morgan. And he's calling her out and saying, oh, no, man, honey, that was your shtick. That is clearly her shtick. Piers Morgan is not someone who racializes everything. And by the way, I'm not a huge fan of Piers Morgan, but what I will say is that he is incredibly smart to call her out.
Piers, we understand what it is. And it is so interesting to me that you yourself, as a white European, find that when people of color talk about race, that you believe is racializing conversations. But when people like you fixate on, well, Barack Obama was a Black president, why don't you object to that? That is racializing a conversation about the former president of the United States. But you can't put your, and I'm sure you find that charming and funny.
I find it hilarious because you're the one. You're the one who said Donald Trump.
You and your friend Donald Trump.
You said Donald Trump is a white fascist.
Are so he is a well.
So that she's like, well, he is, and then she kind of stopped, like, there I go, racializing things. And the other thing that he brought up is her clear hypocrisy. And here's what that entails. Barack Obama killed many, 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 many brown people, and I'm air quoting, brown people with his drone strikes way back when in the Middle East. And she's got nothing to say about that, but she does talk about Donald Trump supporting Israel in defending itself against Hamas in Gaza. And she says that it is fascist and it is racist.
I agree
and
with
yet
Mark
when Obama
Milley,
did the
who
same
was,
thing,
last time I checked, is
I'm not allowed
black.
to mention his skin
I
color.
agree with his former chief of staff, who last I checked was not black and said he's fascist. And Mark Milley said he's fascist to the core.
Okay.
So I happen to agree, and I know this is what it's important to you, with two very white gentlemen about Donald Trump's fascist tendencies.
Okay.
If that makes you sad and uncomfortable, I can't help you, Piers.
No, it doesn't
There's
make me
nothing
sad
I
and
can do about
uncomfortable.
it.
I think it makes you a little bit of a hypocrite, but that's different.
Yeah, and then they had to move on. But I loved how he called her out. Because not enough people do call out Joy Reid because they are scared to call her out, because there's still this notion in this country that we need to, respect people who are constantly race baiting. But I think the American people, I think they're over it. And I think that's why Stephen Colbert got canceled. If you haven't heard that news this morning, Stephen Colbert was canceled by CBS, and he's going to spend another 10 months on the air in what no doubt will be the longest goodbye ever. And the reason is quite obvious. He went woke, and at this point, nobody really cares about the wokeratis anymore. And they're now beginning to pay the price. Do you know why it's especially a happy Friday today? Because NPR and PBS, they are one step closer to losing all of that federal money. Now, don't worry, they're going to be fine because they've got all those other streams of revenue. They will tell you over and over again. But last night, Congress voting to claw back that $9 billion in spending cuts. It is minuscule. It almost feels like a joke, but whatever. But that means that NPR is going to lose about PBS and NPR about $1 million. This is from the Associated Press. The House on Thursday approved an effort backed by President Trump to claw back $9 billion from the federal budget, which includes sweeping cuts to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. The rescissions bill, which Senate Republicans passed early Thursday morning, zeroes out 2 years' worth of funding for the CBP, $1.1 billion. So again, they're going to be just fine. They're still going to make money. But the point is, one of the things that I find interesting about this whole thing is how they have been out there just defending themselves at every single turn, NPR and PBS. Now, yesterday, we had some fun talking about some of the things that NPR had tweeted out. And so today, this morning, we also have the tweets of one Catherine Mayer. Now, she is, I hope I'm saying her name right, but I really don't care, but she is one of the higher-ups at NPR and PBS. I think she's actually the CEO or the president or something, but she was on CNN yesterday.
When it comes to the accusation of bias, I would start, as I always start by saying, which is we, of course, are a nonpartisan organization, and we want to serve and are required to serve the entirety of the American public.
So then they've been doing it all wrong, because there's absolutely no way that NPR has been fair and balanced. Clearly not. As a matter of fact, when you look at some of the tweets that she herself has sent. So I'm going to read some of these. Today, like every single day, is yet another great day to follow more black women, as well as all people of color on this here website. And she goes on and on. Remember earlier that I was talking about Joy Reid and how people on the left, they're so absolutely obsessed with race and with skin color. She also says looting is counterproductive, sure, but it's hard to be mad about protests not prioritizing the private property of a system of oppression founded on treating people's ancestors as private property. Here's another one, and we talked about this one the other day. Never underestimate the ability of white people to center ourselves, which I still don't know what that means. I think we even talked about it, 100,000 watts of FM radio, and not one person could really define what it means to center ourselves. But, I mean, her tweets are clearly just riddled with DEI and woke and all that. White silence, she says, is complicity. If you're white, today is the day to start a conversation in your community. I'll contribute to the conversation by saying that you're an idiot and you deserve to be defunded. That's what I would say about NPR. By the way, you know who was complaining about NPR being defunded? Brian Stelter. Now, here's the thing about Brian Stelter, and I've spoken about this dude a million times, but this is a guy who considers himself, for whatever reason, and I don't understand why it is that Brian Stelter, who made him the king of all broadcasting, I have no idea. You know, he's like the watchdog of the media. Okay. Well, here's what he has to say. This was on CNN about the ending of the funding for NPR.
Not happening now.
No, this is the end of a publicly funded media era. This dates back to the days of black and white television. You know, back in the 60s, Congress saw a value for PBS and NPR, but no more. As a result of this rescission, radio and TV stations will have to lay off staffers and cut back on programming. Some smaller stations will suffer more than bigger stations, right? Popular shows.
So you know what I would say to that? Welcome to the rest of the world. Brian Stelter saying, oh, that means that we're going to have, radio and television stations with NPR. They're going to have to cut back on staff. Well, you know what? If you knew anything about the industry, Brian Stelter, if you knew anything about the industry that you're supposed to be covering, you would know that is happening everywhere in our industry. So to me, and by the way, again, not to belabor the point, but NPR is not going away. It simply isn't. There's some other things going on. If you haven't heard about the birthday letter, I mean, everybody, you know what? Should I wait till 8 o'clock? I'm going to wait till 8 o'clock. I'm going to wait till 8 a.m. 8:05, I'm going to give you a big update on the birthday letter. Everybody is so obsessed about the birthday letter. The letter that Donald Trump, Wall Street Journal is reporting this thing, that it's a letter that Donald Trump supposedly sent to, if you're just joining us, supposedly sent to Jeffrey Epstein. And when I present to you, if you haven't heard it yet, if you're just joining us, if you haven't heard it yet, it is so incredibly stupid that Wall Street Journal is actually reporting this with a straight face. And I guess that's my point, is that this is such a stupid story. I feel stupid covering it because it is just, it doesn't make any sense. We'll do that at 8 o'clock. Can we talk a little bit about Donald Trump's success stories? Because there's a lot of success stories going on. And the more, and we talked about this earlier, where you have the left, and do you know why they're doing this, by the way? Do you know why they're obsessed? Like, Matt has CNN on in the studio here. He watches it so you don't have to, and then I'm stuck with it. But yes, I could change it to Fox News, but remotes, I don't know where they are. Anyway, bottom line is CNN. But do you know why they're focused on this? They're focused on this because their desperation is becoming louder and louder and louder. That's what's going on. Because on that very same channel, on CNN, just a few days ago, you had Harry Enton talking about how popular Donald Trump is within the Republican Party. And yes, on that same station, CNN, they also had a story about how unpopular the Democrats are within their own party. And so they're running out of options. I think that's part of what's going on. They are running out of options. And part of that whole storyline has got to be that the more that they continue to take the wrong side of these 80-20 issues, the worse they look for the midterm elections. I mean, I got an example. Let's talk about the obsession. I mean, earlier I was talking about Justin Jones, the obsession of the left over ICE. Justin Jones, we had Kristi Noem. She came to Nashville, and they're talking about an expedited process for our military to be able to get through, security and the lines going through the airport. And Nashville is one of those airports where they're going to be doing this. A great story. Absolutely great story. But Justin Jones decides that he is going to arrive at the airport and try to pull an Alex Padilla, This was an invite-only press conference, all right? An invite-only press conference. Justin Jones, shocking, was not invited. The reason he wasn't invited is because he would be acting the fool, which, of course, he did. So he shows up at the airport. Justin Jones shows up at the airport and wants to ask a few questions of Kristi Noem, and much to his delight, he is removed from the airport. And one of the questions, no doubt, that he wanted to ask would be, all right, so what about ICE and demasking ICE? Because that's one of the things that Justin Jones and the left want to see. They want to see ICE unmasked so that they can destroy their lives. That is the bottom line. And we all know that ICE, they are definitely under attack. So we've got John Kennedy. And he has a message. He's got some thoughts on what should happen to those people who are trying to attack ICE officers. Listen to this. I absolutely love this.
Republican Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana is here now. Sir, hello to you. I don't see this ending. In fact, if it's up 830% now, who knows where it'll be 6 months from today. What do you think?
They're breaking the law. And what you allow is what will continue. If you put hands on an ICE officer, you should be prosecuted, you should be sent to jail, and you should get to spend some quality time with Bubba.
Nope.
Until we start doing that and prosecuting these folks, it will continue.
Spend some quality time with Bubba. People are freaking out about that, by the way. One person says, why would you add the last part? Why do we accept prison rapes as a normal expectation? Sadly, it is a normal expectation because that is what happens in prisons. And so for Kennedy, he's got a great sense of humor. I love John Kennedy. And I agree with them. Just put the whole Bubba thing aside. But I love the fact that he wants to get tough and charge people if they're going after ICE. I love the fact, one of my favorite stories of this week on this Friday, one of my favorite stories of this week was President Trump, and maybe it was last week, but where he said, you know what? You see all these videos of all of these people that are throwing rocks at these brand new ICE vehicles? Well, we're going to do something about that. We're going to start charging these people with actual crimes. And I do love that story. And I think that is great. By the way, we've got stories of ICE. Federal agents conduct illegal immigration hiring raid at a northern Arizona barbecue chain. That's part of what is going on in the news today. This was also, by the way, happening in Los Angeles, where, there are certain places in LA where it's known that illegals work. That's just the bottom line. And there's a lot of them. And so that is also part of the conversation. But AZ Central, the husband and wife owners of a popular Colt Grill Barbecue and Spirits in northern Arizona, they're now being accused of hiring and harboring undocumented immigrants to work at their restaurants through an elaborate scheme, according to federal prosecutors. Robert and Brenda Clouston, both 61, were arrested after federal agents raided the restaurants and several residences there in Arizona and a Colt Grill restaurant in Foley, Alabama on July 15th, according to federal prosecutors. And apparently what they were doing is they were hiring undocumented immigrants through some sort of a ruse. And listen, we all know that E-Verify does not work. We know that E-Verify doesn't work. That is most certainly something that the Trump administration, if they're really serious, and if anybody is really serious about dealing with the illegal alien problem that we have in this country, E-Verify has got to be fixed. This might be my favorite story of the day. ICE protesters, right? We all know just a bunch of... Anyway, ICE protesters. And they are in Portland, Oregon. Federal police and they're dealing with all of these idiots that are trying to break into this detention facility and so forth. I want you to listen very closely to what they do. They are using Donald Trump's voice to irritate them.
Federal Protective Service, the facility is closed and not open to the public.
Oh, that is such an epic troll.
Vehicular traffic remain on the sidewalk or across the street.
They're honking their horn so that they don't have to hear his voice. They're throwing rocks at the building. They're like, make it stop.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's funny. I think that is an epic troll, and I love that they're doing that. See, one of the things that I like about Trump, one of the things that I love about Donald Trump is the fact that he can appreciate a really good epic troll, right? I mean, that's one of the reasons why we all liked Donald Trump in the first place, because he can go and he can strong arm his way to absolutely torturing the enemy. And the enemy, of course, is the left. And before you say, oh my gosh, Mandis used the term strong arm, or you're saying that Donald Trump's what do they call him? A strong armor, dictator and all that stuff, strong man. And no, but what I would say is that these idiots on the left, they have to be handled in a certain way. They have to be handled a certain way. And doing it strongly, with strength and authority and some good trolling is absolutely, at least in my opinion, absolutely the best way to go.